Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, and then shall the end come.
Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with End Time Ministries, and I thank you for joining me on Wednesday's edition of End of the Age. Now, many of you all will recognize, having listened to us for years, that in the end time there will be an alliance between the world government and the world religious system. And we're watching the ongoing fulfillment of that alliance as we speak. And so I'm going to devote my program today to that and showing you how that we're seeing current events. These things are happening right before our very eyes. But before I get into that, I want to make sure that I announce the Bible study that I'm holding in New York every Thursday evening. I'll be up there tomorrow afternoon. And the Bible study starts at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and it's held at the 4W43 building. That's 4 West 43rd Street in New York, New York. And so I hope you'll be able to join me. We have quite a few people attending, and who knows, but we won't start a church out of that before it's all over with. So it's right downtown Manhattan, a very key location. And God is really blessing. God's there every time. We're having wonderful Bible studies. I'm teaching prophecy, and we're going to get into all kinds of things. So I fly up there every Thursday morning, fly back on Friday, and man, is it worth it? You better believe it is. It's worth everything we have to go through, all the travel, everything, because there are so many sincere people in New York that want to hear the Word of God, want to hear the truth in downtown Manhattan. And so if you'd like to join me, I've had people fly in from out of state to come to the Bible studies. Last Thursday, a guy flew up from North Carolina to bring his brother and come to the Bible study. So if you'd like to join us, it's 4 West 43rd Street, 7:30 p.m. We'll be there tomorrow night. I'd love for you to join me. Great Bible study. And I know a lot of you listening are partners with us. You help with these efforts for us to reach people in different areas all over the world. And so I want to thank you for that as well. Without you, it simply would not be possible. So thank you very much for your partnership with End Time Ministries. Now, let's talk about the alliance between the world government and the world religious system in the end time. It's one of the most recognizable prophecies in the Bible. And it's foretold actually 3 different times, at least 3 times in Scripture. And I'll get into that in the latter part of my program. So if you guys are just joining me for the first 30 minutes, some of the radio stations are we only carry the first 30 minutes. Make sure you go to endtime.com and watch the whole hour program, because I'll get into the prophetic segment of it and tie it all together in about the last 30 minutes. So I found an article in LifeSite News, and the title of the article is this: Globalists, or those that believe in a one-world government, the New World Order, they want the church to serve the New World Order. They're referring to the Catholic Church here. They want the Catholic Church to serve the New World Order. Well, the Bible prophesies that there's going to be a world government established in the end time, and that it will form an alliance with the Catholic Church before it's all over with. Well, we're watching the ongoing fulfillment of that, and have for several years now. But this is one thing I want to go through with you today, because it ties into the Sustainable Development Goals. And if you understand what happened with the Pope's last encyclical, Pope Francis's last encyclical in 2015, Laudato Si', it was about the environment, global warming, climate change, and they were tying all this together And the eventual call was for a global political authority or a world government to manage all this. And so it's the ongoing fulfillment of this prophecy, of this alliance between a world government and world religion. We're seeing it happen right now. And so let me go through some of this article. It'll take me a little while because you've got to get these key points showing how all this is kind of interwoven together. And then I'll get into the prophecy segment here in just a little bit. So from LifeSite News, it reports that a top population control proponent has attained unprecedented access and influence at the Vatican. A presenter for an international symposium on population control said this Thursday, this was last Thursday, but you've got to hear this. I don't want to miss it. As part of an effort to target the Catholic Church and leverage its moral influence in service of a globalist agenda. This is exactly what the Bible prophesies will happen in several places, and I'll get into that here in a little bit. Population control forces are welcomed and provided a platform at the Vatican in the Pope Francis pontificate, according to Italian journalist Riccardo Cassioli. Now, through the rest of this, I'm just going to say Cassioli, but that's who it is. He was an Italian journalist, and they are abetted principally by Bishop Marcelo Sanchez Sarando, the Chancellor for the Pontifical Academy of Sciences and the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences. So Cassioli, this Italian reporter, revealed specifics leading to a magic moment in Sarando's words that had been reached where the speech of the church and that of the United Nations have some synergy. Now, I'm going to define synergy here in a little bit, and it's really going to tie all this in together. Cassioli was one of the 12 experts from across the world to address the threat of population control for International Conference on Population Control. It was a 3-day online symposium conducted just this past week. In his presentation titled Jeffrey Sachs, the man behind the hidden drive for population control, you realize that a lot of these globalist leaders and different things realize that they believe that the population, we're having too much population in the world, and that it's not sustainable for future generations. So we need to control how many people there are. They would love to control how many children you have, your kids have, your grandkids. They want to control that because they don't see it as sustainable if it keeps growing. And you say, well, who are they to control how many children I have, this, that, and the other? There are people that would love to do that, believe me. It's called global governance. And so also, this Jeffrey Sachs is behind the drive for population control, and he's the masked as poverty reduction. So Cassioli first detailed aspects of Sachs's thinking and explained the sustainable development concept. Now, this will tie into global governance before it's all over with. Cassioli described the introduction of the concept of sustainable development, the thinly veiled population control catchphrase, into the Catholic Church social doctrine as a decisive step in the globalist agenda. The Catholic Church was, this is his statement, the Catholic Church was and it is the only point of resistance to the ideology of the New World Order. Now, this is Cassioli speaking, to the idea of the world-led government guided by technocratic elites. He said that the Catholic Church is against that. Well, I, Dave Robbins, have to interject here because on this one point, I'm going to disagree with him on that statement. Because the Catholic Church over the years has repeatedly issued calls for a one-world government. Pope John XXIII in Possum and Terrace in April of 1963, he said, "Today the universal common good presents us with problems which are worldwide in their dimensions and problems, therefore, which cannot be solved except a public authority with power, organization, and with means coextensive with these problems and with a worldwide sphere of activity. Consequently, the moral order itself demands the establishment of some such general form of a public authority or a global authority. This was back in 1963, Pope John 23rd. Well, then Pope Paul VI in December 7, 1965 said, this goal undoubtedly requires the establishment of some universal public authority, acknowledged, or a world government is what they're calling for, as such by all and endowed with the power to safeguard on the behalf of all security, regard for justice, and respect for rights. Then Pope Paul VI on March 26, 1967 stated that who can fail to see the need and importance of thus gradually coming to the establishment of a world authority capable of taking effective action on jurisdictional and political planes. So all of these popes, one right after another, calling for a world government to manage the problems that the global issues. They say, hey, we need a world government here. The challenge of peace, the God's promise and our response, which is a pastor letter on war and peace by the National Conference of Catholic Bishops issued on May 3rd, 1983, stated this. It said, looking ahead to the long and productive future of humanity for which we all hope, we feel that a more all-inclusive and final solution is needed. We speak here of the truly effective international authority for which Pope John XXIII ardently longed for in peace on earth. So, they're calling for a world government. Another one, there is an urgent need of a true political world authority. That was Pope Benedict the 16th on June 29th, 2009. And then, of course, finally, many of you would recognize this. On May 24th, 2015, Pope Francis called for a world government, echoing the words of Pope John XXIII to manage the global warming crisis in his encyclical Laudato Si. He said, given this situation, it's essential to devise stronger and more efficiently organized international institutions with functionaries who are appointed fairly by agreement among national governments and empowered to impose sanctions, not only nationally, but it could get to, and the Bible says it will get to, individual sanctions, personal, as Benedict XVI has affirmed in continuity with the social teachings of the Church, to manage the global economy, to revive economies hit by the crisis. They're saying global warming, to avoid any deterioration of the present crisis and the greater imbalances that would result, to bring about integral and timely disarmament, food security and peace, to guarantee the protection of the environment, and to regulate migration. For all this, there is a urgent need of a true world political authority. So it's easy to see the formulation over the last several decades, the formulation of a one world religion. I can prove that in many ways. That's taking place right now with the Roman Catholic Church at the helm of that. And it's also clear this organization, including Pope Francis, fully supports the implementation of a global authority to govern the citizens of the world. Now, remember, before the program's over, I'm going to show you how the Bible prophesies just such an alliance of the world religion and the world government in the end time, just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. So let me continue on with the article, because some things you have to see, because you're going to see how some things, there's a dramatic shift that has happened over the last several years here. So it states that the Catholic Church and the New World Order, the Church, he pointed out, the writer, along with others, had prevented approval of international statements decreeing the end of the natural family, the affirmation of gender ideology, and the right to abortion in the United Nations conferences way back in the 90s. And for this reason, Cassioli says that the Catholic Church was targeted, that they tried with campaigns for the expulsion of the Holy See from the United Nations, but they were more successful with the infiltration of the associations and groups, of pressure within the Church, formally Catholic, but in fact anti-Catholic. The most conspicuous instance of this, he said, was in the 1990s with the dissenting pro-abortion groups that Catholics for a free choice. A second reason is the attempt to use the great moral force. Now, this is very important. A second attempt was to use the great moral force that the Catholic Church undoubtedly exercises, according to this writer, Cassioli, to put it at the service of the New World Order. There it is again, another call for the Catholic Church and to be exercise its services to promote the New World Order, to come in alliance with that. It said a decisive step to achieve this result was and is the introduction of the concept of sustainable development in the Church's social doctrine. And if you've read the Pope's recent encyclical, you know exactly what I'm talking about. An instance that has also been supported by some bishops. Now, let's talk about the sustainable development guru. A lot of people don't even, when you say sustainable development, they're like, what? Sustainable development? What's that? Well, let's talk about it, and then let's talk about how it's being used to bind the Catholic Church in many ways, among others, to this New World governing system. Cassioli claims that sex is crucial to this guy who's over this population control is crucial to understanding the change in recent years in the Pope's stance on population, development, and the environment. Sachs has been invited to collaborate with the Vatican a number of times, including moderating and co-hosting a Vatican conference on climate change in April of 2015 and presenting at another conference later that year in November, as well as delivering a keynote lecture for the Pontifical Academy of Sciences way back in 2013. This gentleman, Sachs, is scheduled to participate in the next Vatican Climate Change Conference just ahead of us here in early November. Now, Sachs also co-authored the final Vatican Environmental Mission Statement entitled Climate Change and the Common Good. Sachs he's celebrated as one of the most important world economists, and in the latest years is a fixed guest star of conferences organized by the Vatican, especially from the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, more and more centered on ecology and sustainable development, which is global governance. I'll get to that here in a second. I'm going to prove that. But you'll see, whenever you hear sustainable development, that's global governance of every citizen on the earth. Now, Cassioli also said that, in fact, this gentleman, Jeffrey Sachs, is a key figure to understand the transformation that has taken place in the Holy See's approach to the issues of population development and the environment. Now, the origin of sustainable development, let's talk about that because it's very important that you understand this. Cassioli explains that the term sustainable development originally generated from the theories designed for the fishing industry for sustainable yield way back in the 1950s. And later in the 70s, the maximum ecologically sustainable yield concept was transferred to the human species for future generations. Sustainable development. Sustainable development was introduced at the Stockholm Conference on the human environment in 1972 and continued from there. And the limits of development, which was a report from the Club of Rome, the global think tank, was published that year as well, warning of 4 lethal dangers for humanity: the population explosion, I should say, scarcity of food, scarcity of resources, and the energy crisis. And sustainable development would be defined later in the 80s by the UN-instituted Brundtland Commission as the development that meets the needs. This was their definition of sustainable development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs, or more sustainable lifestyles. We're taking too much, so we need to be governed so there will be some for future generations. And so Now, this might seem like common sense, but the underlying goals are based upon the premise that population growth is responsible for underdevelopment and damaging the environment. Now, you realize that there's no God factor in any of this. They're all humanistic solutions by the United Nations and different things. Sustainable development, they don't believe God could feed us and sustain us, so they say, they're not even mentioning God, so we need to handle it ourselves. That's what sustainable development is all about. Global governance by globalists of the global commons, you and I. That's what this whole thing is boiling down to. Well, various conferences convened by the United Nations throughout the 90s on development, the earth, food security, human rights. And you realize the United Nations is totally humanistic. They don't rely upon God at all. It's a humanistic solutions. And so they say, hey, humans cause these problems, which there's really not a problem at all, honestly. God's going to sustain all this. We don't have to worry about it. The Bible says all things work together for good to them that love the Lord. So you don't have to worry about, there will be food, there will be oil, there's all going to be all this stuff. God's created it all. He can continue to create. He could, if He has to, He could rain down Big Macs. Honestly, if He had to. He did it for 2 million Israelites in the desert. Why couldn't He do it for us? So the United Nations is, it is what it is. It's humanistic solutions. But and it goes on to say that these humanistic solutions about human rights, women's rights established official goals, the Sustainable Development Goals, for a 20-year plan to address the varied issues. So, sustainable development was a common thread throughout the conferences, and the concepts of reproductive health and reproductive rights were brought in as well. So they want to govern every single aspect of your life and my life. And they stated, it is a worthy note that such concepts fall within a wider attempt to fix a set of, now this is very important, because they're not talking about a select group of individuals, but this is a wider attempt to fix a set of universal values, global values, or better, a global ethic, a global belief system. Now, Cassioli's reporting on this, and this is what he's talking about. And you remember the global ethic, the Earth Charter, and all these different things that have been set up for years now, decades ago. And they're talking about a global belief system. That's what this whole thing is geared towards, this world governing body, sustainable development. And it's a global ethic to whose realization, get this, all religions are also called upon to collaborate. So they're saying we need a world government with sustainable development, and we need all the religions of the world to buy into this. We need them to collaborate with us. And what does the Bible say? The Bible says there's going to be a world government and a world religion, and they're going to come into alliance, and this world religious system is going to support this world governing body. And it's all found in this article in LifeSite News. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, this is the fulfillment, which I've got, there's many ways we can prove this. But when I saw this article, I thought, man, it's right here, black and white. This is the fulfillment of Bible prophecy. But then the article says, but things are very different now. Many things have changed in recent years. However, now, up until this point, he said the Catholic Church wasn't on board. But he said many things have changed in recent years. He said to where those previously declared enemies of the Catholic Church today are welcomed with all the honor in the Vatican. Jeffrey Sachs, who he's saying in years gone by would never have been allowed there, is the most striking example of this. Cassioli said that, but just scroll through the topics and list of the speakers at the conferences organized by the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, and you'll realize that the concept of sustainable development, with all its declinations, is now home to the Vatican. And he asked, how could this happen? Well, he says, here we have to understand that since the United Nations conferences of the 90s, the Catholic Church has become the main objective to the neo-Malthusian forces. The neo-Malthusian refers to the promotion of population control programs to guarantee resources for current and future populations. It's a fancy word for sustainable development. Cassioli detailed the recent skulk of population control into the Vatican, resisted under Pope Benedict XVI, but welcomed under Pope Francis. An attempt was made in the preparation of Benedict's encyclical Caritas and Veritate, he said, but was ultimately rejected. Caritas and Veritate is based on the concept of integral human development, which, as is clear, is diametrically opposed to sustainable development. But now the Pontifical Academy of Sciences and Pontifical Academy on Social Sciences, under the guidance of Bishop Marcelo Sanchez Serrando, have been directed in recent years in order to allow this ideology of sustainable development to be fully incorporated into the Catholic Church. An important sign of this, Cassioli points out, is the introduction of sustainable development in Pope Francis's encyclical Laudato Si, and that Cassioli said this is a real turning point. And it's no coincidence that Jeffrey Sachs has become ubiquitous in events organized in the Vatican, and not only there, but more and more focused on environment and poverty. Cassioli told the conference that he was not sure that many African bishops really agree with Sachs about birth control and different things, but there are certainly important figures that reside in Rome that do. And this is why the words recently pronounced by Bishop Serrando are still more disturbing and worrying. And he says that, you know what? I'm coming up to a break and I'm going to stop right there because you've got to hear this last statement. So this is the last statement in the article. So if you just got the first 30 minutes, go to endtime.com and watch the program, because I'm going to show how all this ties in to Bible prophecy in intricate detail in the next segment.
Do you want to be a part of something that will affect lives eternally? End Time survives on the goodness of God, product sales, and donations from our wonderful partners. If you find End Time to be a blessing to your life, consider us in your year-end giving for 2017. As a result of your generosity, someone from every country around the world is exposed to the message of End Time each month. Our End Time team cannot reach the world alone, but with our partners and the God we serve, nothing is impossible. To be a part of this great cause, call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463 or visit endtime.com/give. Thank you for giving and being a part of the End Time family.
Turn your scriptures from black and white into color. Experience the footsteps of Jesus. Understand Bible prophecy that is coming to pass right now. Join Irvin and Judy Baxter and the End Time team this spring 2018 for a life-changing trip to Israel and Jordan. Mark your calendar for April 26th through May 11th for this amazing journey. Call 1-800-END-TIME, that's 1-800-363-8463 and press 2, or go to endtime.com/Israel-tour to receive your information today.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archives button.
So you can see as I go through here that the world governing, these globalists they're relying upon the church to bring the religions of the world and gather them together and say, you guys need to prop up this belief system, this climate, sustainable development and all these different things because we want to govern the world. And we can only take them so far politically, so we need you to gather the religions of the world to support this so we can create a truly global community that answers to a one world government. Now that's the goal. That's the bottom line here when it's all boils down to it. And you can tell that in the Pope's Encyclical, and I hope to get that by the end of the program. But this is a very key statement that I want you to read, that I want to read to you, because, and I want to make sure I get it here. So give me just, it says that, because I'm trying to follow along here. So give me just a second. Just hold where you're at. It says Cassioli told the conference that he was not sure that many African bishops really agree with Sachs about birth control. But there are certainly important figures that reside in Rome that do. So this is why the words recently pronounced by Bishop Sarando are still more disturbing and worrying. Cassioli concluded, and that recounting what the close advisor of the Pope Francis has stated at public appearances. So this is very important. Listen at this. He says, we can now say that we have a magic moment, because for the first time, now remember the prophecies when I tell you this, because for the first time, and perhaps the last time, and I know from the prophecy of the Bible, it's not going to be the last time. But he says the speech of the church, or the belief system of the church, the Catholic Church, and the speech of the world government, as represented by the United Nations, have some synergy. So he's talking about this alliance. Now we've got a synergy going on here. What is synergy? Synergy is the combined power of these two entities, the Catholic Church and the world government, this world religious system that's being formed, and what they can achieve as long as they're working together. The power that they can have working together is much greater than the total power achieved by each one working separately. And so Cassioli is saying, and Sarando are saying, look, we now have the Catholic Church and the world government, the United Nations, we're now talking as one voice. We now have a synergy. We now realized the power of us working together is much stronger than us being divided and trying to get things done on two different planes here. So you see what I'm saying? They're talking about the alliance working together for one purpose. What's the purpose? It's a world government. The global leaders years ago realized that we brought this world government along as far as we can politically. Robert Mueller, the prophet to the UN, said that. We've got to have a united religions of the world to prop this up, because the goal is global government. And this is strictly what the Bible prophesies is going to happen. So let's talk about it. So was that an unbelievable article or what? So now let's talk about the prophetic aspect of this. Where does this come out in the prophecies of the Bible? Well, the Bible prophesies the union of politics and religion. Or this is what the name of this program used to be. And we still talk about that on a daily basis. Politics and religion. And so there are three prophecies of the alliance between the world government led by the Antichrist and the world religious system led by the false prophet or the Pope at that time in Scripture. It's found three places. The first one is the Holy Roman Empire revived. The prophecy of the rebirth of the Holy Roman Empire, which has already been fulfilled. In Nebuchadnezzar's vision in Daniel 2, it's the feet of iron mingled with clay. It's the 10-horned beast in Daniel 7. And the 10 horns on the beast in Revelation 13 and Revelation 17, it's prophesied many times, the rebirth of the Holy Roman Empire. And what led the Holy Roman Empire every time? All the way through for 1,000 years, 800 AD, 1806 AD, a political leader and a religious leader. And it's prophesied the union of politics and religion. Then Revelation 17 provides pictures the governmental system of this reborn Holy Roman Empire as a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. It also shows a woman riding on the back of this beast. And this woman is the symbol of the Vatican or the Catholic Church, and the beast she is riding on is the symbol of the world government system. And so the woman will be the power will be the power of the Antichrist. They're going to have a union here. And this is the union of politics and religion. The woman, read it, Revelation chapter 17, the woman riding on the beast. It's the marriage or the alliance of the apostate church and the world government in the end time. And the 10 horns and the 10 toes in this prophecy, the 10 horns on the 10 horn beast, Daniel 7, the 10 toes on the feet of iron mingled with clay in Daniel 2, this symbolizes the 10 nation union, and that will form an alliance with the Antichrist just prior to the second coming of Christ. And out of this 10 nation union, the iron mingled with clay, the Antichrist, will rise up and uproot 3 kings. The Holy Roman Empire has already been reborn. That's easily, we teach a whole lesson on that. That's a whole other Bible study, and there's no way I'll have time to prove that. I think I just did it the other day on the radio, be honest with you. And the Antichrist and the false prophet, they can't be far behind because the system's already been established. You've heard us teach about Charlemagne, the gathering back together of the nations of Europe, what they're trying to do, the current European Union. With the Holy Roman Empire was reborn with the signing of the Lisbon Treaty, November 3rd, 2009. And so they're working towards this established world governing body that the Antichrist will usurp authority over. And see, we can see the alliance of this coming together. We've seen it for years now. And of the alliance between the world religion and the world government. Now, the power base of the Antichrist is now established, and it's awaiting the arrival of them, which is going to be just a few years from now. Then in Revelation 13, it depicts 2 beasts in alliance together. Revelation 13, 1 through 8 foretells of a world government and its leader, the Antichrist. And it states this: John sees a vision, and he says, "And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads, 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns. Upon his head the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, had the feet, its feet were as the feet of the bear, mouth as the mouth of the lion. And the dragon gave him his power, seat, and great authority. And I saw one of the heads as it were wounded to death. And its deadly wound was healed, which we now know was the tearing down of the Berlin Wall. And all the world wondered after the beast," this world governing system, "and the Antichrist. And they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. That's the final 3.5 years, the Great Tribulation, which is just prior to the second coming and the Battle of Armageddon. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds, tongues, nations. It's going to be a world government. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. You say, wow, what a prophecy. It's a prophecy of a world government and the leader of that world government, the Antichrist in the end time. Then, that's the first beast that represents the world government and the Antichrist. The second beast in that same chapter portrays the one world religion led by the false prophet. That was Revelation 11, 1 through 8. Revelation 13, 1 through 8. Revelation 13, 11 through 15 states that, "And I beheld another beast come up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon, and he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, the Antichrist, and his world governing system, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by the sword, and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. So there's a picture of, in Revelation 13, the world government, the Antichrist, and the world religious system. This same picture from Revelation 13 is also shown in Revelations chapter 17 and 18. The entirety of these three chapters in Revelation is devoted to the depiction of the coming one world religious system and the world government. Revelation 17, 1 through 3 says, And there came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away into the spirit, into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit on a scarlet-colored beast, full of the names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. What's the 7-head, 10-horn beast? It's the world government. And the person speaking said to John, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot. Well, this is the warning that judgment is coming. The beast from Revelation 17 is the same 7-headed, 10-horn beast that symbolizes the world government in Revelation 13. The beast in Revelation 13, remember, had the body of the leopard, the feet of the bear, the mouth of the lion, and the 10 horns of the 10-horn kingdom, which was obviously the 10-nation alliance from the European Union. The beast from Revelation 17 is red. We've already learned from different prophecies that that symbolizes socialism or communism. It's from the teaching of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, that the red color symbolizes socialism or communism. And the world government of the Antichrist and the false prophet will be a socialistic world government. The United Nations, totally a socialistic entity. It was designed to be that way when Alger Hiss wrote the United Nations Charter in 1945. Most of the nations of the world today are socialistic, and the ones who are not are quickly moving in that direction. So what we see here from these prophecies, Revelation, Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Revelation 13, Revelation 17 and 18, is an alliance of a one world governing body and a one world religious system working together to create remember Revelation 13 says that this world religious system will prop up the world government just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ in the Battle of Armageddon.
Move Mountains with Irvin Baxter, the new book by Irvin's grandson, provides 30 days of devotion that will enhance your connection to God and others. Authentic illustrations from early morning devotions at End Time will help you identify areas in your life where you can be more intentional and ultimately discover your purpose. Commit to taking this 30-day journey and experience real-life change. Pre-order for only $25.99 at endtime.com/move and get free bonus items worth over $100. Go to endtime.com/move today.
Turn your scriptures from black and white into color. Experience the footsteps of Jesus. Understand Bible prophecy that is coming to pass right now. Join Irvin and Judy Baxter and the End Time team this spring 2018 for a life-changing trip to Israel and Jordan. Mark your calendar for April 26th through May 11th for this amazing journey. Call 1-800-END-TIME, that's 1-800-363-8463 and press 2, or go to endtime.com/Israel-tour to receive your information today.
Well, if you remember in the article that I went through, they talked about the Pope and what had changed when Pope Francis put out his encyclical calling for sustainable development principles to handle this, the global warming, climate change, so-called catastrophe. And then the Pope called for a global political authority, a world government. Well, let's talk about world government in Pope Francis's encyclical, because as you could tell, what I just went through, that it's clear that there's going to be a world government and a world religion. They're going to unite. Well, the Pope called for a world government in his encyclical. So the concept of this is that humans cannot or will not manage themselves. Now, that's what these globalists, these elitists that are trying to establish this world government, this is what they believe, that humans are tearing things up. It's not sustainable. They don't have sustainable lifestyles. So we need to manage them. They must be governed by a select group of more disciplined and better educated humans, i.e. globalist or internationalist, these people that believe in a world governing body. They believe they can run your life better than you do. And since the supposed global warming and climate change hoax is affecting the entire planet, now I'm throwing the word hoax in there because that's what it is. It's just a dreamed up scheme. Then they say that a global management solution is mandatory to regulate every aspect of life for each person on the earth. In the encyclical, this was put out in June of 2015, that Pope Francis advocated, and you can read it, it's about, 70 pages long, and he advocated in more ways than one just such a global governing system. Now, this is the head of the Catholic Church, obviously, calling for a world governing system. Remember, they're coming into alliance. It's prophesied in Scripture in order to save the planet from the quote-unquote disfigurement and destruction of creation. And honestly, if you haven't read the encyclical, you need to. Because, the terminology in there is that the earth and the sun, the moon, they're all our brothers and sisters and mothers, and they actually believe they're part of the human family, and that we're destroying part of our family and sinning against them if we use too much of the resources. And you owe it to yourself, really, to go through that encyclical. It's very eye-opening. But they're calling for the management of the globe in the encyclical. Number one, the call for a world government, sustainable development. What is sustainable development? He calls for sustainable development in the encyclical. Sustainable development is simply this. It's a catchphrase. It's used by activists and government agencies involved in the implementation of Agenda 2030, which is, according to the UN's own website, a comprehensive plan of action to be taken globally, nationally, and locally by organizations of the United Nations system, governments and major groups in every area which humans impact the environment. That was Agenda 21, now it's Agenda 2030. The ultimate goal of these agendas is the control by the United Nations and a future one world government of all human settlements, determining where one can live, what your land should be used for, what you consume, what you produce, every aspect of your life. So remember, sustainable development equals world government policies to control the citizens of the world. And this is what was called for in the Pope's encyclical. Number two, he called for the Earth Charter. He said, you remember the Earth Charter, which was envisioned by its founders as a global governing 10 Commandments. You can go look it up online. It's managing the production and consumption of all humans. How much is your electrical use unsustainable? Well, then we need to put smart meters on your home to monitor how much electricity you're using. And do you really need to use that much? You say, well, how can they control that? Well, if they increase the prices enough, you'll quit using as much, right? You'll say, well, I can't really turn the air conditioning down to 70 where we like it because it's going to cost me too much. I better leave it at 75. I mean, they can control it. They've got all kinds of ways of controlling you. And so in many ways, the encyclical mirrored the principles of the original Earth Charter, calling for the protection of the Earth's ecological system while advocating social and economic justice. Both of these happen to be socialistic doctrines. And this is important for us to know, because since the Bible prophesies the future one world government will be a socialistic entity, then we need to understand really what's going on here. And once you go through the encyclical, I wrote a huge article on it, that the ultimate goal of the encyclical was a one world government. Because they went through all these catastrophic events that global warming, which human-induced global warming, which leads to climate change, are going to cause. And the whole goal of all of it, I mean, it was ridiculous, thousands and thousands of words, was to have a global political authority that managed the whole thing, and that we all need to buy into that. If they could get us scared enough or use these fear tactics, they could get us to buy into this world governing body. And in the name of security, yield up our sovereignty. So you might be asking yourself, well, who could possibly manage the production and consumption of every human, along with the water, the soil, the forest, all the marine life on earth, even ensure universal health care, and much, much more? There are people who believe that they need to manage all of that for you, that there needs to be socialized health care, and just give everybody health care, and now we'll tax them to pay for it, but at the end of the day, if we can give them health care and get them dependent upon that, what somebody can give you, somebody can take away. So you need to be careful how much you're relying upon the government for your living and this, that, and the other. And I can't get all into that. But at any rate, you got to be careful about that kind of stuff. So the United Nations, this is who they believe, of course, the United Nations, this is who they believe could manage all that. Now I'm talking about globalist. We're talking about the world government prophesied in the Bible. The United Nations was designed to ultimately become a one world government. When it was created all the way back in 1945, it was dreamed of decades before that. The Earth Charter itself states that in order to build a sustainable global community, the nations of the world must renew their commitment to the United Nations, fulfill their obligations under existing international agreements, and support the implementation of the Earth Charter, the principles set forth therein, with an international legally binding instrument on environment and the development. Now, all this is called for in Pope Francis' encyclical put out in 2015. Well, what does that sound like, folks? That sounds like a call for a global governing entity, doesn't it? And, is a total reliance on the United Nations as the world managing system, is that the new beginning that was called for by Pope Francis in the encyclical? We need a new beginning. Go through the encyclical. That's what he's calling for. We need a new beginning. He was calling for a world government, that everybody buy into this. We need this global management system to control all of this, even though it's a hoax. Human-induced global warming, which leads to climate change, which leads to all these climate catastrophes, is a hoax. It's propaganda put out by the United Nations. Let's just face it, that's easily proven. These hurricanes and tornadoes and all these different things that are happening, that humans did not cause that. It's been proven easily that there have been times in history when it was warmer than it is now, and we had no coal-fired plants. People didn't drive SUVs and semis and all this other stuff. It's easily proven that it's just simply propaganda. It's fear tactics by the United Nations to get the population of the world to buy into a world governing body. Number 3, in the encyclical, he called for enforceable international agreements. He said, and I'm quoting, "This notwithstanding, recent world summits on the environment have not lived up to the expectations because, due to the lack of political will, they were unable to reach truly meaningful and effective global agreements on the environment." And he said, what we need is enforceable international agreements. They're urgently needed since local authorities are not always capable of effective intervention. What is needed, in effect, is an agreement of systems of governance for the whole range of the so-called global commons. And then finally, in the encyclical, the Pope called for a global governing authority. He said, given the situation, this cataclysmic event that's happening, it's essential to devise stronger and more efficient, organized international institutions, calling for a world government, with functionaries who are appointed fairly by agreement among national governments and empowered to impose sanctions, as Pope Benedict XVI has affirmed, in continuity with the social teaching of the Catholic Church, to manage the global economy, revive economies hit by the crisis, to avoid deterioration of the present crisis and the greater imbalances that would result, to bring about the integral and timely disarmament, food security, and peace, to guarantee the protection of the environment, and to regulate migration. For all this, that's what he's saying we need to have to manage all of that, and all marine life. I mean, they want to manage everything. He states there is an urgent need of a true world political authority or a world government, as his predecessor, Blessed John 23rd, indicated some years ago. It was back in 1963. I read you it earlier on. So here it is. In plain English, the objective of the entire encyclical is a world political authority. Really, the crisis is irrelevant. It's not happening. Humans are not causing global warming, which leads to climate change. It's propaganda. Now, whether it's global warming and economic collapse, immigration, the threat of nuclear war, food shortages, and plagues, whatever, real or imagined, doesn't matter. As long as it produces fear, the global elite are going to use it to promote a one world government. That's the goal of the encyclical. So, prophesied one world government and world religion, we know that global warming is just a ruse by the global elite to establish a world government. Pope Francis has advocated a true world political authority to manage this supposed crisis. And the Bible foretells that in the end time, the world will be ruled by a world government. This global political authority will demand allegiance of all the world's citizens and endeavor to control every aspect of their lives. In order for there to be a complete obeisance among the populace, a one world religious system is going to be established to advocate devotion to the world governing system by all the religions of the world. So it appears, as you can see from today's program, that we are witnessing just such a merger right before our very eyes. Now, most of you know before the end of the program that Irvin, Baxter, myself will be in Israel over the next couple weeks. We will be broadcasting from Israel, so I'll see you on those programs next week.
End of the Age is a production of End Time Ministries. This broadcast will be available on our website, endtime.com, in the archives section. On our website, you'll also find more information about how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. To reach our operators, call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463. End Time Ministries is partner supported. We would like to say thank you to our partners who made this broadcast possible. To do what Matthew 24:14 said, to reach the world with the gospel of the kingdom.